The gold blood clock had counted the death hour of traitors for 300 years. Tonight, the court wanted it to count mine. I stood beneath its golden face with my wrists unbound, because they wanted everyone to believe I had chosen to stand there. The clock towered over the judgment wall of the moon court, taller than the throne, wider than the arching windows behind it. Its frame was made of old royal gold, its hands carved from white wolf bone, and its 12 numbers were written in dried blood that never faded. Beneath it, a silver bowl waited to catch whatever truth the clock chose to drip. The court had filled every balcony. Nobles, in winter silk, pack heirs with polished wolf pins, moon priests in pale robes, guards with silver spears crossed against the walls. And at the center of the high dais, Alpha King Theron Vale sat on the black throne with his new council arranged around him like a ring of knives. He had not looked at me once, but his wolf shadow had. That hurt more than the clock. 1 year ago, Theron had rejected me in this same hall. Not beneath the clock then, beneath the open moon, before the entire kingdom. I still remembered the shape of his voice when he said the words that divided my life into before and after. I reject you, Amara Thorne. The court called it mercy. The priests called it necessary. His council called it the end of a dangerous bond. I called it the moment my soul stopped breathing. The court called that dramatic. The clock would call it evidence. But the bond mark on my wrist had not vanished. It had turned pale gold, almost invisible, unless moonlight struck it. The healers said that meant the bond was dead, but stubborn. The nobles said it meant I refused to let go. Lady Serapha, high priestess of the old moon temple, said it meant treason could hide in a woman's blood. So they brought me to the gold blood clock. Amara Thorne, Serapha announced, her voice smooth enough to pass for sorrow. Former Luna of Ravencairn, rejected by sovereign law and moon witness, you stand accused of lingering bond contamination, unlawful grief, and spiritual treason against the Alpha King's reign. A few nobles murmured approval. Unlawful grief. Only a court could make heartbreak sound like a crime. Serapha stepped from beside the clock, her white robes trailing behind her, her silver hair woven with tiny moon bones. She was beautiful in the way frozen lakes were beautiful before they drowned people. In one hand, she held the golden needle used to wake the clock. In the other, she held a strip of black silk. "Place your hand on the blood plate," she said. I looked at the plate beneath the clock. It was round, gold, and shallow, polished by centuries of condemned hands. If the clock named my death hour, I would be executed before dawn. If it stayed silent, I would be exiled beyond the northern border. If it stopped completely, old law said the court had to listen to whatever moment it revealed. No one expected that. The gold blood clock did not stop for rejected women, because rejected women were supposed to disappear quietly before time learned their names. A noble girl near the front whispered, "She looks thinner than last year." Another answered, "Rejected Lunas always do." I kept my face still. That had become my only talent. I stepped forward before the guards could push me. For the first time, Theron moved. Only slightly. His hand tightened on the arm of the throne. The movement pulled my eyes to him before I could stop myself. He looked older than he had 1 year ago, though kings were not supposed to age from one winter. His black hair fell against a face carved hard by restraint. His shoulders were broad beneath dark armor and a white wolf mantle. His eyes were gold, cold, and watchful, but his wolf shadow behind the throne looked wrong. Thin at the ribs, dim at the throat, dying. I blinked, and the image blurred back into ordinary shadow. Serapha noticed me looking. Her smile sharpened. "Do not seek pity from the king. His mercy ended when his bond to you did." Theron's jaw shifted. Still, he said nothing. That silence pressed against my chest harder than any hand. I placed my palm on the gold plate. It was cold. Serapha lifted the needle and pricked my finger. One drop of blood fell onto the plate. The clock above me groaned awake. Tick. The sound rolled through the hall like a stone door closing. Tick. The bone hands began to move. The court leaned forward. I felt the clock enter my blood, searching for guilt, treason, hidden death. It moved through memories I had tried to bury. My mother brushing my hair before my first moon feast, Theron touching my wrist when our mate mark first appeared, the court applauding our bond, Serapha blessing us with her pale hands. Then the rejection. The clock slowed. My breath caught. Tick. The hour hand dragged backward. Nobles gasped. Serapha's face hardened. Impossible. The minute hand turned red. Theron stood. The clock hand spun faster now, reversing through hours, days, months, dragging the hall's shadows backward along the floor. The golden frame began to drip blood into the silver bowl below. Not my blood. Not only mine. Something older. Something stolen. The clock stopped. The sound cracked the air. Every candle in the moon court went out. Above me, the white wolf-bone hands pointed to the exact hour of my rejection. The clock face darkened into a mirror, and in that mirror, the court saw Theron standing before me 1 year ago, mouth open to reject me, while his wolf shadow behind him threw itself against invisible chains. Tears of gold ran from the wolf's eyes. The ghost of me in the memory collapsed when the rejection struck. But the clock did not show me falling. It showed a pale golden version of my soul splitting apart, one half vanishing into the floor beneath the king's feet. The gold blood clock bled harder. A voice older than the moon whispered through its gears. Death hour found. Not execution. Rejection. No one in the moon court moved toward me after the clock spoke. Not the guards. Not the priests. Not even Lady Serapha, though her hand still held the golden needle that had pierced my finger. The blood, dripping from the clock's frame, fell into the silver bowl 1 drop at a time, and each drop sounded louder than breath. Tick. Except the clock was not ticking anymore. It had stopped. Its white wolf-bone hands remained fixed on the hour of my rejection, and the mirror-dark face still showed the ghost of that night. Theron's mouth opening, his wolf shadow chained behind him, my soul splitting apart as if the bond had been cut with a blade too fine for flesh to bleed from. A nobleman whispered, "That is not a death." The gold blood clock answered by bleeding harder. The silver bowl overflowed. Blood ran down the judgment wall in thin golden red lines, forming a circle around my feet. I tried to step back, but the floor held me in place, not with chains, not with force, but with memory. The same kind of memory that lives in scars and waits for the body to admit what the mind survives by denying. Theron descended from the throne. The court parted for him quickly, but not cleanly. Fear made Silk whisper. Moon priests lowered their eyes. Pack heirs who had once watched my rejection as entertainment now stared at the clock as if it had accused them too. Serapha recovered before he reached me. "Your Majesty," she said, stepping between us. "The relic is confused by lingering bond, contamination. The former Luna has carried unfinished grief for a year. It may be reflecting emotional death, not legal death." "Move," Theron said. His voice did not rise. Serapha moved. Theron stopped 3 steps from me, close enough that I could smell winter pine under his armor, close enough that my faded mate mark burned pale gold at my wrist, close enough that his wolf shadow, stretched behind him across the floor, lifted its head toward me with a sound no one else seemed to hear, a whimper, not from a king, from something dying inside him. Theron's eyes dropped to my wrist. "It still burns." I almost laughed. 1 year of silence, 1 year of exile, inside the palace walls. 1 year of people calling my grief illegal, and those were the first words he gave me. It never stopped, I said. The words came out softer than I wanted. His jaw tightened, but his face stayed guarded. Why did you never say so? The court heard the question. So did I. And for one sharp moment, I hated him more for asking it than I had for not looking at me. Would you have listened? Something moved behind his eyes. Pain, perhaps, or memory waking where pride had kept it buried. Before he could answer, the clock groaned again. The mirror face changed. The rejection scene rewound, not smoothly. It jerked backward, like a body dragged by invisible hands. The court saw me rise from the floor, saw the golden half of my soul return from beneath Theron's feet, saw his wolf shadow recoil from its chains. Then the memory slowed. There, behind the throne on the night of the rejection, stood Lady Serapha. Her white robes glowed under moonlight. One hand rested on the gold blood clock's smaller ritual dial, hidden behind the judgment curtain. Her other hand held a thread of gold-red blood stretched between 2 fingers. My blood. Theron turned toward her in the present. Serapha's face remained calm, but her eyes had gone too still. The clock played the memory forward. In the vision, Theron stood before me 1 year ago, his face strained, his hands clenched at his sides. He was not the cold king I had remembered. He looked like a man fighting invisible hooks in his throat. I will not, ghost, Theron said. The court gasped. My breath stopped. Serapha twisted the blood thread around her finger. The gold blood clock's hidden dial turned once. Ghost Theron's mouth opened. His wolf shadow threw itself forward, but the chains around it tightened until golden blood spilled from its eyes. Then his voice spoke the rejection. I reject you, Amara Thorne. Not from his heart, from the clock. The memory shattered. The court erupted. I staggered, but the blood circle around my feet held me upright. Theron stared at the place where his past self had stood, and for the first time since I had known him, the Alpha King looked afraid of his own voice. Serapha lifted her chin. A king may be guided when the kingdom is endangered. Theron turned on her slowly. You forced my mouth. I protected your crown. You used her blood. I used a dangerous bond before it used you. The clock rang once. The sound cut through the hall. A new line appeared in blood across its golden face. Time blood right confirmed. The moon priests stepped back from Serapha. She saw it and changed tactics at once. Ask what she is then. Ask why the clock answered her blood. Ask why a rejected Luna can make a royal relic accuse the temple. Time. Blood women were outlawed for a reason. My skin went cold. Time blood. The words struck somewhere deeper than memory. My mother had once told me our family felt grief late because time did not leave us cleanly. I had thought she meant women remembered pain too well. The clock disagreed. Its hands moved for the first time since stopping. Not forward, not backward, but inward. The golden face opened, like an eye. Inside it, I saw myself as a child, standing beside my mother, while she hid a small gold thread beneath my skin at the wrist, where a mate mark would one day appear. If time ever lies about you, she whispered in the vision, bleed where it broke. The memory vanished. My wrist split open along the faded mate mark. Theron reached for me, then stopped before touching. That restraint hurt and healed in the same breath. What did she hide in you? He asked. I looked at the blood sliding down my hand. The gold blood clock answered before I could. Last time blood, Luna. The balconies went silent. Serapha's calm finally cracked. No, she whispered. The clock's hand slammed back to the rejection hour, and beneath Theron's shadow, his wolf coughed gold blood onto the floor. Gold blood touched the black floor beneath Theron's wolf shadow. The court recoiled, as if the shadow itself had become flesh enough to wound. I stared at the spreading drops. They did not soak into the stone. They gathered in small, shining beads, each one trembling with a heartbeat that was not mine. Theron's wolf stood behind him. No longer only a darkness cast by candlelight, but a vast shape of black fur and fading gold ribs, its head lowered, its breath broken. The creature's eyes found me through the crowd. Not angry, not accusing, pleading. Theron turned and saw it fully for the first time. His face went still. The kind of stillness that comes before a man's world breaks in private, except this time the entire court was watching. "My wolf," he said. The words were barely more than breath. Serapha moved quickly, stepping toward the blood before anyone else understood what it meant. "Do not touch it. The relic is manifesting bond rot. If it spreads, it may infect the court." The gold blood clock struck once. The sound bent her sentence out of shape. Across its golden face, another line formed in blood. Not rot. Soul wound. A murmur tore through the balconies. My wrist burned where the hidden time blood thread had split open. The blood from my mate mark did not fall straight down. It pulled toward Theron's wolf. Thin golden lines stretching between us across the floor. Serapha saw the lines and lifted her needle. "Seal her." 2 moon priests rushed toward me. Theron's command stopped them. "Touch her," and lose the hand. The hall froze. It was the first time he had protected me in a year. I hated that my heart recognized it. Serapha turned slowly. "Your Majesty, she is awakening forbidden time. Blood in open court. She is bleeding because you used it first. I used a controlled rite to prevent a dangerous future." Theron's gold eyes sharpened. "Show me that future." Serapha's mouth closed. The clock answered. Its hands spun inward again, dragging the blood on the floor into a circle around Theron's wolf shadow. The mirror face darkened, then opened a second vision. This one showed the Moon Temple, 1 year ago, 3 nights before the rejection. Serapha stood before the gold blood clock, with my blood in a silver vial. Around her gathered council elders, moon priests, and Lord Cerwyn, Theron's uncle, his face half hidden beneath a black fur collar. My stomach tightened. Cerwyn had been the first person to call me unsuitable after Theron marked me as his mate. In the vision, he looked at Serapha and said, "If the king keeps the Thorne girl, her blood will undo the succession clock." Serapha poured my blood into the relic's hidden dial. Time. Blood lunars do not obey straight fate. They can reveal what moment truly breaks a bond. If she learns what she is, she may expose every forced severance the temple has approved. A council elder whispered, "Then make the king reject her." Serapha's face did not change. "His wolf will resist." Cerwyn smiled. "Then make the rejection kill enough of her that the wolf spends the rest of its life dying with her." The vision shattered. Silence came down hard. Theron did not move, but his wolf did. It lunged toward Cerwyn, who stood in the present near the lower dais, his black fur cloak fastened with a silver wolf head clasp. Guards stepped in front of him by instinct. The wolf shadow slammed against an invisible limit and coughed more gold blood onto the floor. I felt it in my own chest, a tear through something that should have remained whole. Cerwyn lifted both hands, face pale but composed. "Your Majesty, old visions can be shaped by forbidden blood. You know this." Theron looked at him. "Do I?" The question was quiet enough to frighten the hall. Serapha seized the moment. "This is exactly why time blood was outlawed. It makes kings doubt the hands that protect them." I laughed once. The sound surprised even me. Every face turned. "Protect," I said. "You used my blood to force his mouth, killed part of my soul, chained his wolf to the wound, and called my grief treason." My voice shook, but it did not break. The clock began to tick again. Not forward, Not backward. In time with my heart. Theron looked at me then, not as the rejected Luna his court had taught him to forget, but as someone standing at the center of a crime that had used both of us differently and destroyed me more openly. I remember fighting it, he said. The words cut deeper than apology. I turned toward him. In the vision? I asked. No. His throat moved. In my body. The clock rang. The mirror face opened again. This time the memory came from Theron himself. The court saw the rejection through his eyes. Me standing beneath the moon, pale and trembling but still proud. Serapha's gold thread tightening around his throat, his wolf screaming inside him, his own hands digging bloody crescents into his palms as he tried to keep his mouth closed. Then came the sentence. I reject you, Amara Thorne. The memory did not end there. It followed him after I collapsed, back to his chambers, to his knees, to his hands around his own throat, as if he could tear the cursed words back out. His wolf lay in the corner, bleeding gold from its ribs, staring at the door I had been carried through. Theron had not forgotten pain. He had been taught to stand inside it silently. When the vision faded, his face was ruined by restraint. Serapha whispered, "Enough." The clock disagreed. Its golden frame cracked. From the crack fell a thin shard of blood-colored glass. It landed at my feet, pointing toward the hidden stair beneath the judgment wall. The old death records. The place where traitor hours were kept. Serapha's eyes widened. Gerwin saw and stepped back. Theron noticed both. "What is beneath the clock?" he asked. No one answered, so I did. The moment they stole, the blood from my wrist flowed toward the hidden stair and shaped itself into a key. The gold blood clock stopped again. Then every number on its face changed into my name. The court saw my name replace every number on the gold blood clock. Amara, Amara, Amara. 12 times around the golden face, written in blood that was mine and not mine, each letter bright enough to stain the white robes of the moon priests crimson. The nobles nearest the judgment wall stumbled back. Someone dropped a silver spear. The sound rang against the stone like a verdict no one wanted. Read aloud. Theron did not look at the clock. He looked at me. That was worse. For 1 year, I had imagined what it might feel like if he finally saw the wound he left behind. I thought it would satisfy something broken in me. Instead, it made the air harder to breathe. His gold eyes held horror, guilt, and a helpless kind of fury that had nowhere clean to go. The blood key at my feet slid toward the hidden stair beneath the clock. Serapha moved first. She lifted the golden needle and drove it toward the key. Theron caught her wrist. The motion was so fast, the court barely saw it. One moment she stood beside the clock, needle raised. The next, the Alpha King's hand closed around her arm, and his wolf shadow rose behind him with blood on its muzzle. "Do not," he said. Serapha's face tightened. "If that door opens, old death hours will wake. You do not know what she may release." Theron's grip did not loosen. "I am beginning to understand what you buried." Gerwin stepped forward from the lower dais. "Nephew, this is not a moment for wounded sentiment. The court has seen enough instability. The former Luna should be contained until the relic can be purified." Former Luna. The title struck exactly where he intended. My mate mark burned. Theron turned his head slowly. "Say that again." Gerwin's mouth tightened. He did not. The gold blood clock gave one heavy tick. The blood key slipped into a seam beneath the judgment wall. Stone opened. A narrow stair appeared behind the silver bowl, descending into darkness lit by faint golden veins. The air that rose from below smelled of old blood, dust, and winter roses left too long on a grave. I stepped toward it. Theron reached slightly, then stopped himself before touching me. The restraint was visible, painful. "Amara," he said quietly. "You do not have to go down there." I almost smiled, not because it was funny, because a year ago I had begged with my eyes for him to say something like that. Anything like that. Now, when he finally gave me choice, it stood in the same room as the wound he had helped make. "I know," I said. Then I descended. The stairs were too narrow for a court procession, but courts hated being left behind by truth. Theron followed first. Serapha came under guard, her wrist still marked where he had held her. Cerwyn came after, wearing calm-like armor. Behind them, priests, nobles, and soldiers crowded the entrance, afraid to enter fully, and more afraid not to witness what happened below. At the bottom waited a circular chamber. The walls were covered in clocks. Not grand clocks like the relic above, small ones, hundreds of them, some gold, some bone, some rusted black. Each held only 1 hour. Beneath each clock was a name. I saw names of traitors, names of exiled Lunas, names of heirs who died in their sleep, names of mates who supposedly broke bonds by choice. The blood in my wrist pulled toward the far wall. There, hidden behind a torn velvet curtain, hung a clock with no hands. Beneath it was my name, Amara Thorne. But the plaque below did not say traitor. It said unfinished death. Theron stopped beside me. I felt his reaction before he spoke. A sharp stillness. The kind that meant a man had found a blade pressed not to his throat, but to something he had believed already lost. Serapha's voice came from behind us. "Some bond deaths do not complete cleanly." I turned. She stood between 2 guards, pale but still proud. "You knew," I said. I suspected. The clock nearest her cracked. A drop of blood slid down its face. "Lee." The word appeared in gold-red script. Theron's eyes burned. "Speak carefully." Serapha's mask thinned. "Fine." I knew. The rejection should have severed her cleanly. Instead, only part of her soul died. The rest clung to the bond. I could not move. Part of her soul died. The words were not new. I had lived them. But hearing them named before witnesses made my body feel suddenly cold, as if the missing half of me had left a door open, and winter had been walking through it for a year. Theron's voice dropped. "Where is it?" Serapha looked at him. For the first time, she seemed afraid of what honesty might cost. "Inside your wolf," she said. The chamber changed. Every small clock began to tick. Theron's wolf shadow appeared against the wall behind him, larger than before, but thinner at the ribs, gold blood staining its chest. Beneath its fur, something pale and luminous flickered, like a trapped flame. Me, or the part of me the rejection had torn away. My breath broke. The wolf lowered its head toward me, not as a beast to prey, as a grave asking forgiveness. Cerwyn spoke sharply. "If she takes it back, his wolf dies." Theron turned toward him. "And if she does not?" Cerwyn's silence answered. The gold blood clock's voice traveled down from above, through stone and blood. Both remain dying. The chamber doors slammed shut. Every clock on the wall stopped at once. Then the handless clock bearing my name began to grow hands made of blood. The handless clock grew its hands from blood. One drop stretched into an hour hand. Another sharpened into a minute hand. They trembled against the empty face beneath my name, searching for the moment a death had begun but never finished. All around the chamber, hundreds of smaller clocks remained frozen, their names watching from brass plates and bone frames. The old death records had gone silent, as if even traitor hours knew better than to interrupt a soul being measured. Theron's wolf shadow stood against the far wall with its head lowered. Inside its chest, the pale golden piece of my soul flickered. I could feel it now, not as memory, as hunger. For a year, I had lived with a hollow place beneath my ribs, A missing warmth I had mistaken for grief, because grief was the only word the court allowed me. But seeing that lost piece, trapped inside Theron's dying wolf, made the wound suddenly precise. The rejection had not simply hurt me. It had divided me and left the king's beast carrying what had been torn away. The blood hands on my clock jerked toward midnight. Theron stepped between me and his wolf shadow. "No," he said. The word was not command this time. It was terror. Serapha watched him carefully. "If she takes back what belongs to her, your wolf may not survive the release. The bond wound has rooted too deeply." Theron did not look at her. "You made it root there. I preserved your reign. You keep saying that, as if it makes murder sound like governance." Cerwyn's voice came cold from the other side of the chamber. "Careful, nephew. A dying wolf cannot hold a throne. If this room sees you choose her over the crown, the court above will hear it before dawn." Theron's gold eyes remained on me. "Then let them hear." My breath caught. The words should have been everything I had once wanted. They were not. Not yet. A king choosing me after a clock proved I had been wounded was not the same as a man believing me when I bled quietly. Part of me wanted to step back, to refuse the shape of a rescue that came late enough to stand on my grave, but the pale light inside his wolf pulsed, and pain doubled me over. Theron reached for me. This time, I let his hand touch my arm. The contact sent a shock through the chamber. Every clock shuddered once. The blood hands on my death record spun wildly, then stopped at the rejection hour again. Serapha whispered, "The bond is trying to close." "No," I said through my teeth. "It is trying to remember where it was cut." The gold blood clock's voice drifted down. "Time blood must name the break." A red seam opened in the floor between Theron and me, and inside it appeared the memory of the rejection, like a river running beneath stone. I saw myself kneeling in the moon court 1 year ago. I saw ghost Theron fighting the blood thread around his throat. I saw Serapha turning the hidden dial. I saw Cerwyn watching from the shadow of the throne with satisfaction. Then I saw the moment the word struck. My ghost self did not simply fall. A golden thread tore from my chest and flew into Theron's wolf shadow. The beast tried to push it back. Serapha's time blood rite nailed it there with 3 drops of my blood. 1 at the throat, 1 at the heart, 1 at the ribs. I understood. She did not only force the rejection, I said. She made his wolf hold the part of me it failed to save. Theron's hand tightened on my arm. Not enough to hurt. Enough to betray what he was feeling. Serapha's face paled. Cerwyn cursed under his breath. The chamber clocks began ticking again. Slowly, one after another. Theron turned toward Serapha. "Remove it." She laughed once, sharp and afraid. "You think I can? If I could remove it cleanly, I would have done so before your wolf began failing in public." The truth slipped out too easily. Theron went still. "You knew my wolf was dying." "I knew your wolf was resisting the severance. It should have accepted the right. Instead, it kept mourning her. A silence, deeper than darkness, filled the chamber. My throat tightened. Theron looked at his wolf shadow. The beast's gold eyes closed for one breath, as if ashamed to be seen grieving, after everyone had called grief weakness. I stepped past Theron. He caught my wrist. Amar, the sound of my name in his mouth, no longer felt stolen. That made it more dangerous. "If you touch it," he said, "you may lose what is left. If I do nothing, I remain unfinished." His jaw clenched. I looked at him fully. "You do not get to protect me from the consequence of what was done to me." The words hurt him. Good. They needed to. Then he released my wrist. I crossed the chamber toward his wolf shadow. It lowered itself until its chest was level with my hands. The pale golden fragment inside it flickered brighter as I approached. It was not whole. Neither was I. I placed my palm against the wolf's chest. The chamber vanished. I was back in the rejection moment, standing between past and present. Ghost Theron's mouth opened. Serapha's blood thread pulled tight. My younger self looked at him with a love I could barely recognize now, bright and terrified and trusting. The word reject formed again. This time, I stepped into it. Pain split through me, not like a wound, like time trying to correct itself by breaking the person who remembered too much. I pressed both hands to the golden thread, tearing from my ghost self, and spoke the truth the court had never allowed. The bond was not broken by choice. The memory trembled. Theron appeared beside me, not the ghost, not the king in the chamber, but the man between both. He put his hand over mine on the golden thread. The rejection was forced, he said. The thread burned white. My lost soul fragment tore free from his wolf. The beast howled. Theron dropped to one knee. In the chamber, every clock began to bleed. Blood ran down every clock in the hidden chamber. Not in streams, in seconds. Each drop fell from a different face, struck the stone floor, and became a tiny echo of the rejection hour. Around us, hundreds of old death records began to whisper at once. Traitors condemned, lunas severed, heirs erased, mates declared dead, while some part of them still lived inside another body. Theron was on one knee beside me, one hand pressed to his chest. His wolf shadow writhed behind him, huge and fading, its gold ribs flaring as the piece of my soul tore loose from its heart. I felt the fragment return toward me like a star pulled through broken glass. It wanted to come home. My whole body reached for it, but the bond wound was not clean. Serapha had nailed my soul into his wolf with time blood. Pulling it free opened the place where both of us had been forced to survive wrong. Theron gasped. His wolf coughed gold blood onto the stone. I staggered as the soul fragment entered my chest. For one breath, I felt whole. Then pain hit so hard I nearly screamed. A year of missing life rushed back into me all at once. Every night I had woken hollow. Every morning I had touched my faded mark and hated myself for still feeling him. Every court whisper that told me a dead bond should not ache. The missing half of me did not return gently. It returned, carrying everything I had been forced to live without. Theron reached for me, then stopped himself halfway. Even in agony, he remembered. My choice, not his claim. Amara, he said, voice rough. I pressed one hand to my chest. It is mine. His face tightened. I know. That answer mattered. Serapha saw it and panicked. She tore free from one guard, seized the golden needle from her sleeve, and slashed her palm open. Blood sprayed across the nearest wall of clocks. Then let time finish what mercy delayed, she hissed. The chamber convulsed. The handless clock bearing my name struck once. Its blood hand spun forward, not to the rejection hour, but beyond it toward a future I had not lived. The face filled with an image of me lying beneath the gold blood clock at dawn, eyes open, mate mark extinguished, Theron standing over me with his wolf dead at his feet. The court above screamed through the open stair. Cerwyn shouted, "Seal the chamber." The door began to close. Theron rose with visible effort, his wolf shadow stumbling behind him. No one leaves. His command cracked against the stone, but his wolf was too weakened to make the chamber obey fully. The door kept grinding shut. Serapha lifted her bleeding hand toward me. Time. Blood always demands a completed death. If the rejection did not finish you, the clock will. The clock with my name began to tick. Forward. Toward dawn. I understood then why she had feared me. Time blood did not simply reveal when a bond was broken. It could prove when a death had been falsely named, delayed, hidden, or forced into another shape. Every rejected woman the temple had called dramatic. Every mate who had collapsed after severance. Every wolf that had died slowly after its bond was cut. The clocks had recorded them all. and Serapha had been feeding those unfinished deaths into royal law. I looked at the wall of names. "How many?" I asked. She smiled through fear. "Enough that no court will survive your answer." The clock answered for her. Every small face opened. Women appeared in gold-red reflections. Rejected lunas, severed mates, quiet widows whose bond, deaths, had been written as illness or obedience. Some wore noble silk, some wore servant grey, some still had hands pressed to their chests, as if holding in the part of themselves the temple had torn loose. Their clocks all showed different hours, but every hand pointed toward the same hidden dial behind the gold blood clock. Serapha's right. Theron saw them. His expression darkened into something colder than rage. "You built my law on dead women's time." Serapha's voice shook. "I built stability." "No," I said. "You built silence and named it peace." The wall of clocks rang. One by one, the unfinished death records turned toward me. I felt them asking, not for revenge, for witness. Theron stepped beside me, unsteady but present. "What do you need?" The question nearly broke me. Once, I had needed him to believe me before the relics proved anything. He had not. That failure would remain between us, even if the truth now stood screaming in gold and blood. But this question was not command, not rescue, not possession. It was an offering. I looked at his dying wolf shadow. "If I open these records, it may pull from your wolf too. Then it pulls. You may lose it." His eyes held mine. "It has been dying since the night I let them use my mouth. You did not know. I still let a court teach me not to ask why my own wolf was crying." The words landed in the chamber quietly. No excuse, no polished apology, only truth, accepting its own weight. I took his hand. The bond mark between our wrists flared pale gold. Not healed, not clean, but alive enough to burn. Together, we touched the blood key formed from my wrist. The gold blood clock above answered through the stone. "Name the stolen hour." I looked at the death records of every woman whose pain had been turned into law. Then I looked at Serapha. "The stolen hour," I said, "is the moment a bond is forced to die, while both souls are still alive." Theron's hand tightened around mine. "And the crime," he said, "is murder by severance." The chamber split open with gold light. Every clock began to run backward. Every clock in the chamber reversed at once. The sound was unbearable, not because it was loud, but because it was precise. Hundreds of golden ticks unstitched themselves through the walls, pulling years of false death records backward through blood, bone, and moon law. The reflections of rejected lunas and severed mates flickered across the clock faces. Each woman caught at the hour. The temple had named her pain acceptable. Then the hours began to change. A noble woman's clock stopped. Not at fever, but at the moment a priest cut her mate bond to secure an alliance. A servant's clock stopped not at childbirth, but when her wolf died after her true mate was forced to marry another. A queen's clock stopped, not at grief, but when the temple declared her bond unstable and drained it into a succession rite. One by one, the dead hours corrected themselves. The chamber shook with their names. Serapha staggered back, blood still dripping from her palm. "Stop this." No one moved to obey her, not even the priests. Theron stood beside me with his hand locked around mine, his face pale from the strain. His wolf shadow flickered behind him, thinner with every clock that opened, because the same rite that had wounded me had been used to strengthen his throne. The temple had not only killed bonds, it had fed the royal line with the stolen time of broken mates. I felt the truth enter him. So did the court above. The gold blood clock projected the chamber's visions into the moon court, high across the judgment wall for every noble and priest to see. The audience that had gathered to witness my execution, now watched the old Moon Temple's crimes spill backward through time. Cerwyn moved toward the stair. Theron's wolf shadow lunged, weak but furious, blocking him in darkness. "Leaving?" Theron asked. His uncle's face tightened. "This is no longer judgment. This is collapse." I turned toward him. "For whom?" He looked at me then, really looked, and for the first time his contempt showed its fear. "You think exposing every forced severance makes you powerful. It makes you dangerous. A kingdom cannot survive if every dead bond is reopened." "No," I said. "A kingdom cannot survive if every wound is ordered to stay quiet so men like you can call the silence peace." The clocks rang in answer. Cerwyn's mask broke. "Your bloodline should have ended with your mother." The words froze me. Theron turned slowly. "My mother?" I asked. Serapha closed her eyes. "Too late. The clock with my name changed again." Its blood hand spun past the rejection hour, past my childhood, past my birth. The face opened into a memory of my mother standing beneath the gold blood clock years before I was born. She was younger than I remembered, with the same dark hair and the same pale gold mark at her wrist. Serapha stood before her, not yet high priestess, but already robed in white. My mother held a newborn child wrapped in gold cloth. Not me. "Ah, boy." My breath vanished. Theron looked at me, then back to the clock. Serapha spoke softly, almost bitterly. "Your mother was the last time, blood Luna before you. She discovered the severance rites and tried to expose them." The memory continued. Cerwyn stood beside the clock, younger, smiling. "Then, remove the heir." My mother clutched the child to her chest. "He is not yours to erase. He is time. Blood," Cerwyn said. "He can inherit the clock. He can open every hour we sealed." The vision blurred. A priest took the child. My mother screamed. The clock struck a hidden hour. The child vanished from her arms, as if time had swallowed him whole. I stumbled. Theron caught me by the shoulders, then loosened his grip the moment I steadied. "Amara." I could not answer. All my life, I had believed myself an only child. My mother's silences had seemed like grief for old wounds, not for a son stolen out of time itself. The gold blood clock bled a new word across the chamber wall. "Unfinished heir," Serapha whispered. "He was not killed." Cerwyn's face went white. The clock answered, hidden between hours. The entire chamber shifted. Behind my name clock, another clock appeared where stone had been smooth a moment earlier. Small, tarnished. Its hands missing. Its face empty except for a child's name written in faint gold. Amara Thorne, my brother. A sound left me that did not feel human. Theron looked at the clock with horror. "Where is he?" Serapha's lips trembled. "The clock took him. Cerwyn ordered it." "I performed the rite," Cerwyn snarled. "Because time, blood near the throne would have ruined us all." Theron stepped toward him, but his wolf faltered, coughing gold blood again, as another stolen clock opened. I understood then. If I freed the stolen hours, I might free my brother, but every corrected death would pull more stolen strength from Theron's wolf. The same crimes that had hollowed rejected women had been feeding royal power for years. To restore the truth completely, the throne had to lose what it had stolen. Theron understood at the same moment. His eyes met mine. For once, there was no command in them. No king, no alpha. Only the man whose wolf was dying, because my soul had been broken inside it, and who now had to decide whether truth mattered when it cost him more than guilt. "Open it," he said. Cerwyn shouted, "You will kill your beast." Theron did not look away from me. "Then my beast dies clean." The words struck the chamber. My chest hurt with them. Not love, not forgiveness. Something harder. I turned to the hidden clock bearing my brother's name. My blood rose from my wrist in a thin golden thread and crossed the air toward its empty face. Serapha dropped to her knees. If you pull him from between hours, you may not get back what you lost. Time does not return whole things. I looked at her. Neither did your mercy. Then I touched Elias's clock. The chamber went white, and somewhere inside the gold blood clock, a child began to cry. White light erased the chamber. For a moment, there was no court, no clock, no wolf shadow dying against the wall. There was only a sound I had never heard before and somehow knew. A child crying from a place-time had no right to keep. Then the light thinned. I stood inside the gold blood clock. Not beneath it. Inside it. Golden gears turned around me like moons caught in cages. Blood ran through narrow channels between them, carrying fragments of lives that had been paused, severed, delayed, or renamed by old temple rites. Some gears held faces. Some held voices. Some held moments so painful they had been locked away before the people living them could understand what was being stolen. Theron stood beside me, not the king, in armor. Not fully. More like the part of him the clock could not strip down to title. A man with grief in his hands and gold blood on his shadow. His wolf stood behind him, faint and massive, its ribs glowing weakly. You should not be here, I said. His eyes remained fixed on the maze of gears. You touched the clock. The bond pulled me after you. The bond is broken. No, he said quietly. It is wounded. That is not the same thing. The words hurt because they were true. A cry sounded again. I turned toward it. Between two turning gears, a small golden chamber hung suspended in bloodlight. Inside it sat a boy no older than 4, curled beneath a blanket that had not aged. His dark hair fell over his face. His small hands clutched a broken wooden wolf. Elias, my brother. I moved toward him, but the gears shifted, closing the path with blades of golden time. Theron caught my arm before I walked into them. Wait. I almost snapped at him. Then I saw the gears were marked. Each one bore a name. Rejected Lunas, severed mates, lost heirs. Women whose bond deaths had fed the gold blood clock for generations. Elias was hidden behind their stolen hours, protected and imprisoned by the same machinery that had erased them. Serapha's voice came through the gears, distant but sharp. You cannot pull 1 hour loose without answering the rest. The white chamber flickered, and I saw the hidden record room again. Serapha kneeling on the blood-slick floor. Kerwin shouting for the door to be sealed. The court, above watching through the clock's projection. Theron's physical body still standing with mine. Both of us frozen in the spell while his wolf coughed gold blood across the stones. Time was moving outside. Slowly, but moving. Theron looked at the names on the gears. What does it want? The clock does not want, I said. It records. Then what do the records demand? I knew before the answer formed. Witness. The word appeared across the nearest gear in blood. Not sacrifice. Not death. Witness. For 300 years, the gold blood clock had been used to name traitors' death hours. But beneath that royal purpose, it had kept a second record. Every hour, stolen by force. Every bond severed against both souls. Every life paused to preserve power. It had not forgotten. It had only waited for blood that could make time testify. My blood, the time bloodline. I placed my hand on the nearest gear. A woman's memory opened. She stood in a wedding hall, smiling beside a man she did not love, while her true mate was held outside under silver chains. A priest turned the hidden dial. Her mate mark faded. The court applauded. Years later, she died with one hand pressed to her chest, and the record called it weakness of the heart. Name her, the gear whispered. I looked at Theron. He nodded once. not commanding. Standing with me, Lady Orianne Vale, I said, the name entering me as the clock released it. Bond severed by temple right. Death falsely recorded. The gear cracked open, not breaking, but freeing the hour trapped inside it. A golden thread flew from it toward Elias's chamber. Another gear turned toward me, then another. I named them one by one. Not all their stories. There was not enough breath for so much stolen life. But names, true hours, true crimes. Each name cost heat from my body. Each corrected record sent another thread toward my brother's prison. Theron named some with me when my voice weakened, taking the weight into his own chest. With every name, his wolf faded further. He felt it. So did he. Stop, I whispered after the seventh name. Your wolf. Keep going. You will lose it. He looked at me then, and there was no crown in his eyes. If it survives by eating stolen hours, it was never whole. The next gear opened. This one held my mother. She stood beneath the gold-blood clock with Elias in her arms, screaming as Serapha drew the child's hour into the hidden dial. Cerwyn watched with cold satisfaction. My mother did not beg for herself. She begged for the child to be remembered. The clock had taken him, but it had also obeyed her last time-blood command. Remember him somewhere they cannot reach. I touched the gear with both hands. My mother, I said, voice breaking. Celine Thorne, time, blood, Luna. Her son was stolen between hours. Her daughter was hidden in plain sight. The gear split open. Gold light flooded Elias's prison. The little boy lifted his head. For one impossible moment, he looked exactly as he had been when stolen. Small, frightened, alive. Then time rushed over him. His body blurred, lengthened, fractured through years he had not lived. Child, boy, young man, shadow, memory. The clock tried to return him all at once, and no human soul could survive that hole. I screamed his name. Theron stepped forward and pressed both hands against the golden chamber. Take from me, he said. I stared at him. Theron, my wolf has carried what was stolen from you. Let it carry time back to him once. The wolf shadow behind him lifted its head. It did not resist. Gold blood poured from its ribs into the chamber around Elias. The violent rush of years slowed. The blurring stopped. The child did not become a grown man. He did not remain untouched by time either. He settled into the shape of a boy around 12, pale and trembling, clutching the broken wooden wolf in hands that had finally aged enough to hold it properly. Theron collapsed to one knee. His wolf shadow flickered almost transparent. I caught him before he fell completely. You should not have done that, I whispered. His breath was ragged. I know. Then why? He looked up at me, and the answer was quiet enough to hurt. Because your family has paid for my throne long enough. The golden chamber opened. Elias fell into my arms. He was warm, real, shaking. Sister? He whispered. I held him so tightly the clock around us blurred. Behind us, the gears began to collapse inward. The stolen hours had been named, not all corrected, not all healed, but opened. Enough for the clock to no longer obey Serapha's hidden dial. The gold-blood clock's voice thundered through its own machinery. Unfinished air returned. Stolen hours witnessed. Royal wolf, unpaid. Theron's hand tightened around mine. Royal wolf unpaid. The word struck colder than any curse. Then the clock cast us out. We crashed back into the hidden chamber beneath the moon court. Elias in my arms, Theron on one knee beside me, and his wolf shadow lying at his feet like a dying beast made of smoke and gold. Above us, the gold-blood clock began counting down. The countdown did not sound like a clock. It sounded like a heart failing. Each strike from above rolled through the hidden chamber, and into Theron's wolf shadow, making the dying beast flicker against the blood-stained wall. Elias clung to me, shaking with the terror of a child who had slept inside time and woken into a room full of enemies. His fingers dug into my sleeve. I held him with one arm and reached for Theron with the other, though I did not know which of them needed me more. Theron tried to stand. His wolf did not. The shadow beast lay at his feet, its ribs nearly transparent, gold blood pooling beneath it in thin streams that ran toward the clocks on the walls. The stolen hours had been named. Elias had been returned. The false death records had been opened, but the clock had demanded a final payment, and now every golden hand above us pointed toward the beast that had carried too much of what the temple stole. Royal wolf unpaid. Serapha lifted her head from where the guards held her near the stair. Her face was pale, but triumph sharpened her mouth. "You see, time keeps balance, even when fools call it cruelty." Theron looked at her. "What does it want?" She smiled. "The power your wolf carried from severed bonds. The stolen hours fed the throne for generations. You opened the records. You returned the heir. Now the clock wants the debt removed from the royal beast." "And if it is removed?" I asked. Her eyes slid to me. "Then the Alpha King's wolf dies." Elias whimpered against my side. Theron did not look away from Serapha. "And if it stays?" "The gold blood clock answered from above. All corrected hours decay. I understood before the court did. If the stolen power remained inside Theron's wolf, every name we had witnessed would rot back into false record. The women would disappear again. Elias would be dragged between ours. My soul fragment would remain scarred by a return that could not hold. The clock had opened truth, but truth still needed a place to live that was not built on theft. Cerwyn laughed softly from the shadows near the sealed door. "There is your noble choice, nephew. Keep your wolf and let history heal itself quietly, or kill the beast that makes you king for the comfort of ghosts and a girl who hated you yesterday." Theron turned toward him. "I do not need my wolf to know what you are." Cerwyn's smile thinned. Theron knelt beside his wolf shadow and placed one hand over its fading head. The beast's gold eyes opened. For the first time, I saw no rage there, no royal dominance, no alpha command, only exhaustion. It had spent a year dying with the piece of me it could not save, and longer than that, carrying stolen strength from women whose names the temple erased. Theron bowed his head. "I am sorry." The wolf breathed once against his palm. Then it looked at me, not pleading now, asking. I set Elias gently behind me. "Stay close." He nodded, tears streaking his face. I stepped toward Theron's wolf. Every clock in the chamber ticked faster as I approached. My restored soul fragment burned in my chest, painful and bright. The bond mark on my wrist glowed pale gold. Across from me, Theron's mark answered beneath his sleeve, dim but alive. Serapha's voice rose. "Do not touch it. Time. Blood cannot purify a royal wolf without taking the debt into herself." Theron stood sharply. "No." I looked at him. "You do not get to decide that." His face tightened. "And you do not get to die fixing my throne." "I am not fixing your throne." The words quieted the chamber. I placed my hand over the wolf's chest, where stolen gold pulsed under shadow. "I am taking back the witness." The clock stopped counting down. For one breath, every eye turned toward me. Then the chamber opened inside my blood. Names surged through me. Orianne Vale, Celine Thorne, Lunas, widows, servants, queens, girls whose bonds had been cut and whose deaths had been renamed. Not their pain, not all of it. Only the record of what had been stolen, the witness, the truth the clock had stored inside royal power because no one else was allowed to carry it. Theron reached for me, but stopped before touching. His hand hovered there, shaking. Amara, I heard everything in my name. Fear, regret, a love too late to ask for anything. I can carry witness, I said through the pain. Not stolen life, not stolen strength, witness. The difference mattered. The gold blood clock heard it. Above us, its golden face cracked from top to bottom. The stolen light began to leave Theron's wolf. It poured into the air, no longer feeding the beast, no longer burning me, no longer hiding inside the throne. It turned into thin gold threads, each one flying back to the clock that held its proper name, the chamber filled with returning hours. Theron's wolf convulsed. Its body shrank, not into death, but into something leaner, darker, stripped of false power. The gold ribs vanished. The bleeding stopped. What remained was wounded, weak, but real. Royal wolf cleansed, the clock said. Theron sagged with relief so sharp it looked like pain. Serapha screamed, "No, no. That power belongs to the crown." Cerwyn lunged toward the hidden dial on the wall, but Elias moved first. My brother stepped from behind me, small and pale, still holding his broken wooden wolf. He lifted it toward Cerwyn with trembling hands. "I remember you," he whispered. The toy's eyes flashed gold. The hidden dial shattered. Cerwyn staggered back as every clock bearing a stolen heir's record turned toward him. Blood-red chains of time shot from the walls and wrapped around his wrists, throat, and ankles. He fell hard to the floor. Serapha tried to run. The gold blood clock struck once. Her own shadow froze ahead of her, pinned by a golden hand. Theron rose slowly. His wolf shadow stood behind him, weak but upright, no longer dying, no longer fed by stolen hours, just his. He faced the priestess and his uncle. "Lady Serapha, Lord Cerwyn, you will stand before every name you buried." Cerwyn spat. "You cannot rule after this." Theron's voice was quiet. "Then I will learn to rule without stolen time." The chamber doors opened. Above us, the moon court waited in terrified silence. I took Elias's hand. Theron turned to me, and for a moment, the bond between our wrists glowed with something fragile enough to frighten us both. Not healed, not forgiven. Alive, together, we climbed toward the court and the clock that had finally begun to tell the truth. The moon court no longer looked like a court. It looked like an audience trapped inside the crime it had applauded. When I climbed from beneath the judgment wall, with Elias's small hand locked in mine, every balcony had fallen silent. Nobles stood pale beneath their winter silks. Moon priests huddled near the pillars, as if robes could hide them from the relic they had served. The gold blood clock towered above them all, its golden face split down the center, its 12 numbers restored but bleeding faintly around the edges. Theron emerged behind me. His wolf shadow followed. The beast was smaller now, leaner, darker, no longer glowing with stolen time. It looked wounded, but alive. Its head stayed low, not from weakness alone, but as if it understood that survival bought with stolen hours was not strength. Behind us came Lady Serapha and Lord Cerwyn, in chains of gold blood time, each step forced by the very relic they had used to condemn others. The court saw Elias. Whispers rose at once. A child hidden between hours could not be explained away as grief. He stood too real, too frightened, too much like the portrait of my mother that still hung in the old lunar corridor. His eyes were mine. His mark at the wrist was pale gold, unfinished, but living. Serapha lifted her chin despite the chains around her throat. "Look at what she has brought into your court. A stolen heir, a cracked clock, a weakened king. This is what time blood does. It takes stable law and makes every death negotiable." "No," I said. My voice carried more clearly than I expected. It makes forced death answerable. The gold blood clock rang once. The court flinched. Theron stepped beside me, not in front of me. The rejection of Amara Thorne was forced through time. Blood right, by Lady Serapha, under the command of Lord Cerwyn. The act severed part of her soul, and bound it inside my wolf. Every judgment made against her after that was unlawful. A noble woman whispered. Then she was never truly rejected. The words cut through me strangely. For a year, I had wanted the court to say that. I had thought it would return something. But standing there with my brother's hand in mine and Theron's wounded wolf at my side, I understood that truth did not erase what happened. It only stopped the lie from owning the wound. I looked toward the noble woman. The rejection still happened. Her face paled. It was forced, I said. But I carried it. My body carried it. My soul carried it. Do not make my pain disappear, because the crime is inconvenient to name. The clock ticked once. Approval, or witness, maybe both. Theron's jaw tightened. Amara is right. The bond was violated, not erased. The harm remains mine to answer for, even where my will was stolen. Serapha laughed bitterly. How noble. Will you confess every severance now? Every royal alliance protected by temple timing? Every Luna removed so a better marriage could hold the border? The clocks beneath the wall answered before Theron could. Their reflections appeared across the broken gold face. Orianne Vale, Celine Thorne, the servant mate from the West Kitchens, the queen whose grief had been drained into succession law, names and faces, rising one after another, until the court could not pretend I was the only wound. Theron turned toward the moon priests. Open the temple's severance records. One of them trembled. Your Majesty, some names belong to living houses. Then living houses can learn what they inherited. Cerwyn's chains tightened as he stepped forward. You will destroy your alliances. Theron looked at him. You destroyed the meaning of alliance when you made consent a ritual detail. The court shifted. Some nobles looked ashamed, others afraid. A few angry enough to reveal themselves. I knew this night would not heal Raven Cairn. It would fracture it. But perhaps it had already been fractured, and all we had done was remove the gold paint from the crack. Elias squeezed my hand. Will they take me again? He whispered. Every mother in the hall heard him. Every priest, too. I knelt before him, ignoring the court. No. Serapha smiled faintly. Can you promise that? Time. Blood makes such brave vows before it learns the cost. I rose slowly. The cost is witness, I said. Not silence, not stolen children, not women dying by pieces while priests call it stability. The gold blood clock opened its split face wider. A beam of gold-red light fell onto the judgment floor. Within it appeared a blank record page, suspended in air. At the top, blood script formed. Restored time blood witness. Beneath it waited a name. Mina. Theron saw it and went still. The court waited. Serapha watched with hungry fear, as if she hoped the burden would finally frighten me into stepping back. It did frighten me. That was the only honest thing about it. To write my name there meant every forced severance, every false death hour, every hidden bond wound could call to me. Not for me to suffer alone. Not again. But to stand as witness when time had been made to lie. I looked at Theron. He did not say, do it. He did not say, do not. He only said, your choice. Those two words hurt more than a vow. I lifted my bleeding wrist and touched the suspended page. Amara Thorne, I said. Time, blood Luna of the restored line. My name burned into the record. The gold blood clock stopped bleeding. For one breath, the whole court held still. Then Every forced severance clock beneath the judgment wall began to open. Not all at once, not violently, but one by one, releasing red gold threads that rose into the air and wove themselves into a new ring around the broken relic. A ring of witness, not execution. The clock's old title cracked from the wall. Traitor, death hours. New words formed beneath it. Hours' truth was forced to bleed. Serapha sank to her knees. Cerwyn cursed under his breath. Theron faced the court. Lady Serapha and Lord Cerwyn will live. They will stand before every opened hour and name the right, the victim, the house that requested it, and the law used to bury it. Cerwyn laughed without humor. Execution would be kinder. Yes, Theron said. That is why you will not receive it. The guards dragged them beneath the clock. No one applauded. A kingdom learning its own cruelty had no right to cheer. When the chains passed me, Serapha stopped long enough to look into my face. You think witness makes you free? I looked down at Elias, then at the clock, then at Theron's wolf, standing alive without stolen gold. No, I said, but it makes the cage visible. The gold blood clock rang through Raven Cairn, not for death, for the first hour, returned. By sunrise, the gold blood clock no longer looked like a weapon. It looked wounded. Its golden face remained cracked from crown to base, but the crack no longer bled. Around it, the new ring of witness turned slowly, each red gold thread carrying an hour the temple had once stolen and renamed. The old judgment wall had been cleared of execution banners. The silver bowl beneath the clock, once used to catch traitor blood, now held the broken golden needle Lady Serapha had used to force my rejection. I stood before it, with Elias beside me. My brother had not let go of my hand since we returned from inside the clock. He watched everything with the wary silence of a child who had been hidden between hours and returned to a world that had moved without him. His small wooden wolf was still clutched in his other hand, its cracked eyes faintly gold. Theron stood a few steps away, not on the throne, not above me, beside the judgment floor, where the court could see the mark beneath his sleeve glowing faintly in answer to mine. His wolf shadow remained behind him, lean and exhausted, but alive. No stolen gold filled its ribs now. It no longer looked like a royal beast fed by old power. It looked like a wounded wolf learning to stand on its own bones. The court waited. Some waited for orders. Some waited for punishment. Some waited for the old world to somehow return if they stayed quiet long enough. Theron did not let it. The charge against Amara Thorne is void, he said. Her rejection was forced by time. Blood right. Her soul was severed without consent. Her grief was named treason by the people who caused it. The words moved through the moon court like cold water through ash. He turned toward the priests. Every record written from that false rejection will be burned and rewritten under witness. Every title stripped from her will be restored. Every exile, seizure, and punishment carried out under bond contamination law will be reviewed before the restored clock. A moon priest lowered his head. Yes, Your Majesty. Theron's eyes hardened. Do not say it, as if obedience makes you clean. The priest flinched. I looked at Theron then. A year ago, I would have mistaken that fury for healing. Now I knew better. His anger could clear a path, but it could not walk the whole road for me. It could not give back the nights I had spent hollow. It could not return the part of me that had died at the rejection hour and come back carrying scars. Time itself could not smooth. Lady Serapha and Lord Cerwyn were brought beneath the clock in gold blood chains. Serapha's white robes were stained red at the sleeves. Cerwyn's black fur collar hung torn around his shoulders. Neither looked defeated enough for my liking. People who built cages rarely believed the first broken lock meant the end. Theron faced them. You will live. Cerwyn's mouth twisted. You think that frightens us? No, Theron said. Being remembered correctly will. The gold blood clock rang once. Every opened hour around its face brightened. Lady Serapha will name every forced severance rite she performed. Theron continued. Lord Cerwyn will name every house that requested one, every heir stolen, every Luna erased, every bond broken for succession, alliance, or convenience. Their testimony will be taken beneath this clock, before the restored time-blood witness. Serapha looked at me. You will become what you hate, a woman chained to other people's wounds. I stepped closer, Elias still at my side. No, I said. I will become what you feared, a woman who can say when the wound began. For once, she had no answer. The clock opened one small face near its lower rim. My mother appeared there, not fully, not alive, but clear enough that Elias gasped. Celine Thorne stood in gold-red light, her hands empty now, no child being torn from her arms. She looked at my brother first. Her expression broke with a tenderness. I felt like a hand against my chest. Elias, she whispered. He began to cry. Then she looked at me. My brave girl. The words nearly undid me. I was too late, I said. No, my mother answered. You arrived when time could no longer lie. Her image faded before I could ask for more. Maybe mercy never stayed long in rooms built for judgment. But it had come. That was something. When the court was dismissed, no one rushed toward me. That was its own kind of change. They parted. Some bowed. Some avoided my eyes. Some looked afraid of the mark on my wrist and the witness ring turning above the clock. Let them be afraid, I thought. Fear was not the same as respect, but it was sometimes the first language power understood. Theron approached only after the hall had emptied enough that his words would not become performance. Elias had been taken by two older women from my mother's house, both weeping and laughing softly as they wrapped him in a cloak. He looked back at me every few steps, until I nodded that he was safe. Then I was alone with the king who had rejected me, and the man whose stolen voice had helped kill me. Theron stopped before me. I owe you more than public truth, he said. Yes. The answer came easily now. He accepted it. I owe you every law broken, every record restored, every house named, every hour returned, and every day I stood silent while you carried what was done to both of us. I looked at the gold blood clock. Its hands rested at the rejection hour still, not as death now, but as witness. You were used, I said. His jaw tightened. Yes, and I was destroyed. His eyes closed briefly. Yes, that was the beginning of honesty. Not balance. Not forgiveness. Just the refusal to make our wounds equal because they had touched the same knife. The bond mark between our wrists glowed softly, alive, but not demanding. I cannot go back to the woman who loved you before that night, I said. Theron's face tightened with pain, but he did not reach for me. I would not ask you to. If I stand near you again, it will not be because the clock proved the bond survived. I know. It will be because you become someone I can choose without betraying myself. He bowed his head once, low enough for the empty court, the cracked clock, and the ghost of our broken hour to see. Then I will spend the rest of my reign becoming possible. The words entered me quietly, not as a vow I trusted, as one I would watch. Outside, Ravencairn's bells began to ring the first restored hour. Across the kingdom, old severance records would open. Names would return. Lies would bleed. Some bonds would heal. Some would end, honestly. Some families would never forgive what time had taken. But the clock would no longer kill women quietly and call it law. I walked toward the open doors. Theron did not stop me. He walked beside me. Only when I looked back and allowed it. The morning light touched my wrist, and the pale gold mark warmed not a chain, not a command, not proof that love could be forced to survive anything. A question, a living one. Behind us, the gold blood clock struck once, not for traitors, not for death, for the hour truth began again.